Welcome. Today's topic, video games. Hi. I found a video and it's bad. It's terrible, completely awful, garbage, even rubbish, if you will.
There you are, playing the PvP in your World War II shooter, and all of a sudden, you're a Nazi. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose this. Yet there it is. And it's treated no differently than playing a British soldier.
That's right. Bet you weren't expecting that one. So, if you've ever played God of War, that means you are now actually a god. If you've ever played Dark Souls, that means you are now an unstoppable being of pure chaos. What can I say except, why? Why was this even thought of in the first place?
This is bad on so many levels.
You're absolutely right. It is bad on so many levels. Do you know how stupid this concept you've created is?
No one should ever have a random chance of fighting for the Nazis. And we should never express that there's no meaningful difference between Nazis and Allied soldiers.
Okay, first of all, no one says that. No one has ever thought that the Special Air Service has literally everything in common with, say, the Brandenburgers. Nobody says that. Nobody has ever thought of that. Everybody knows that there are fundamental differences between the two sides that played a role in World War II. You, my friend, are the only person who ever said that.
And before anyone equivocates and says not all German soldiers in World War II were Nazis, if they were wearing the swastika and are functioning as an arm of the Nazi government, then unless the game goes out of its way to tell you specifically that your particular character is not a Nazi, then they're a Nazi.
Are you kidding me? Like, is that an actual point that you're trying to make? All right. Well, let me give you a modern day rendition of what you just said. So, let's say you, the viewer, are fighting for the American army. Now, your particular mission is in Iraq, and you have to seize a village because there's a high-class target in that particular village. And, you know, you're wearing the US flag on your arm, right? You are under the command of the American government, right? Then they tell you, specifically tell you to shoot a civilian, then guess what? You're a war criminal. You didn't choose this. You're a war criminal. See how dumb it sounds?
In that multiplayer shooter, when it switched you to the German side, did it go out of its way to tell you that the person you're playing was pressed into service under threat of their life? Yeah, that's a big old nope.
No. No, of course not. Because if you are playing a game about World War II, you obviously have to know at least some things about World War II to understand what is going on. And the game doesn't explicitly tell you people were forced into being Nazis because it is implied. I'm pretty sure almost everybody knows that people were forced into being Nazis under the threat of their life and their families' lives. Whether you wanted to or not, if you lived in Germany or any of the German puppet states, you had to follow under the order and law of the Nazi government. That's pretty well known. I don't understand what stake you're trying to drive into the ground here with that one.
Oh, and on a similar note, let's please stop forcing people to play as terrorists as well. There you are, playing your modern shooter, and all of a sudden you're a terrorist. You didn't ask for this, you didn't choose this, and yet second verse, same as the first. There it is.
Oh boy, here we go again. Hear that, all you CSGO players? You're a terrorist now. What's the difference between walking along that desert road and setting a bomb inside of a house in the game than doing it in real life? There is no difference. You are a terrible person. You should feel ashamed. That was obviously sarcasm. Do I even have to cover this half of the video? It's gonna be the exact same as the first. But I'll do it. I don't mind.
I mean, that's literally the name of your side in the game. We can do better than this. Even if you put aside all of the people who have had traumatic experiences with these groups, who have lost loved ones to terrorists, or who have had generations of their families wiped out by Nazis, no one should have to put on the costume of an ideology they find abhorrent without actually opting into it in your game.
So what do you suggest we do then, huh? Just get rid of every single World War II game? Every single modern day game? Or no, let's just get rid of FPS games as a whole. It would make the world such a better place. Because, you know, you can't replace these things. If you have a World War II game, well, what do you replace the Nazis with? The Japanese soldiers? Well, guess what? They objectively did even worse stuff than Nazi soldiers. Would you replace them with Italian soldiers? You can't. They switched sides halfway through the war. For modern day games, what do you replace the terrorist with? Because that's the whole point of most of those games, is the war on terrorism. So what do you replace the main opposing side with?
By making people do so, we get them to stop thinking about it, to stop thinking of the meaning behind these things. We normalize them.
Let's be honest. If you're old enough to use a controller and actually play the game, you're old enough to know that video games are fake. You are old enough to know that by playing the video game, you are not going to become a character inside the video game. You're making it sound like people are being brainwashed into becoming terrorists.
We make them just window dressing for entertainment. Those uniforms, those symbols, become things that no longer inherently revolt us. They reduce our visceral reaction to seeing the embodiment of these ideologies. Now, does this make us totally ignore the history that comes with them? No. But for some people, it moves them from the territory of revolting to just edgy. It makes scrawling a swastika on something change from unthinkable to just dangerous. It means you might not take iron crosses all over a website as a warning sign that you should immediately leave, and if you don't leave, you might start reading and buying into hateful ideas there.
Oh, and here we are. After all that big talk, after everything you said, you destroy your reputability by interchanging a swastika and an iron cross. Now, a little history lesson here that ironically I'm sharing with a history channel. An iron cross has nothing to do with Nazism. It's a war decoration. It's the equivalent of the Purple Heart. I don't know if you didn't fact check this, if you didn't know somehow, because I've looked on your channel. There are videos about World War II. So you must have known. There's no how. You must have known that an iron cross is not the same as a swastika.
It seems like such a small and simple thing, but it's things like this that erode our safeguards against dangers we sacrifice so much to fight. By the time you've played 100 hours of being a Nazi, their voice stabs become memes and in-jokes with your friends. By the 1000th time you've respawned as a terrorist, you're either celebrating them or making fun of them, neither of which helps the global crisis we have that takes thousands of lives every year.
You know, that's a pretty good point. You know what else isn't going to help this crisis that kills thousands of people every year? Your video. So what moral high ground do you have now? Oh yes, suddenly, now that I've made this video, Al-Qaeda has decided to quit. The United States military has decided to leave and not bother with any of the oil that sits under Iraq. See, it doesn't help at all. Video games don't make a difference on the war effort.
So what do? That's easy. Don't make them morally equivalent. Don't make there be no in-game moral difference between your Nazis and your allies, between your terrorists and your counter-terrorist squads. Frame PvP as a training exercise, or simply take one of your non-odious sides and recolor them so that it's red versus blue.
That has got to be the worst solution I've ever heard. Why? If you want to turn every single PvP game into just a training exercise, just make everything paintball guns, go play Splatoon. That's all. That already exists. If the thought of having a 50-50 chance of playing for the terrorist force offends you, go play a game that doesn't do that, like Halo. Go play Halo if you're so obsessed with the thought of red versus blue.
As a training exercise, or simply take one of your non-odious sides and recolor them so that it's red versus blue, rather than Axis versus allies. A good example of a game that does this is Rainbow Six Siege. All of your bomb diffusion and hostage rescue multiplayer with no normalizing terrorists.
Wait. Rainbow Six? Have you even played the game? You can literally choose to play as a terrorist holding people hostage. What? Are you serious? Are you actually serious? I'm done. I can't do it.
In fact, by having all of the characters as counter-terrorists training for a possible threat, it highlights how real and present of a threat that is. And if you decide that you need to have both sides be playable, don't make them interchangeable. Don't have players randomly spawn in as one or the other. Allow players to choose which side they're on. Now, of course, this has all sorts of in-game problems, such as creating shorter wait times for fashion.
You obviously know what you're talking about whenever you're speaking of video games. So I'm surprised you don't know that in most games you can actually choose what side you're on unless that side is already full. Is that not the craziest thing? What an amazing game mechanic.
You know what? Those wait times could be artificially extended if it meant players had an active choice in what teams they would represent if you're saying we need people playing Nazis in our games. And if you're going to say, but we need it for historical reasons, then your game better actually be historical. You can't really just hide behind the fact you called your desert map El Alamein and say, but it's historical. If that were the case, you need your PvP to at least represent real historical events and be a realistic take on those battles. Once you make both sides balanced, it's also no longer historical. And you can't really say that you need Nazis anymore for historical accuracy. Oh, and once you let players get cool weapons that weren't actually at that particular battleground, it's also no longer historically accurate. And you can't declare that your game will suffer if you don't put players in the jackboots of the Third Reich. And once your map is something carefully designed to have good gameplay by a team in a room in San Francisco or LA, and it's not a faithful reconstruction of the actual places the historical events occurred in, you can no longer say we need to have players take up arms in service of terror or hate.
But wait, I thought you didn't want the game to be historical. You just sat there whining about how a game has Nazis in it, a World War II game at that. And now you're saying, oh, it better be historically accurate or it doesn't count. Listen. How do you expect any franchise to force 10, 15, 20 players to follow an exact set of orders in order to make the game historically accurate? You can't do it.
And look, we're not saying we can't have games about World War II or about terrorism. We're not even saying we shouldn't make games where you play as a Nazi or a terrorist. But what we are saying is that the fact that you're playing as a Nazi or a terrorist in a game has to mean something. And it can't just be a skin. It can't be something that a game randomly drops you into. And really, if we are saying anything in this episode, it's this. Games can do better. And in this particular case, it's not even that hard to do better. And it's no more costly to do better. All it requires is that we in the game industry be cognizant of the world around us and what these symbols we're drawing on mean. That we think as we're building, not just about the game we're working on, but about the world as a whole. If we can do that, we can take a big step forward for the industry. We can stop helping to normalize Nazis.
Well, final take on this. Bad video. Terrible video. I don't even, they didn't even provide any evidence that video games actually desensitize you to that kind of stuff. They probably couldn't even find any evidence of that happening. But I'll link the video in the description of this video down below. I don't really have anything else to say. That's about it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Bye.